Microsoft Excel is a great and beloved tool for finance professionals, and I'm not here to bury it today, but I just want to take a little time to discuss its strengths and its limitations for your finance function. So if you're a finance person like me, spreadsheets really have had a huge impact on your life. I remember loading VisiCalc onto my dad's early IBM PC with a pair of floppy disks. In the 90s, mid-90s, I think it was, I made a big switch from Lotus 123 and began a lifelong relationship with Microsoft Excel. Now that I think about it, that's almost as long as I've been married. So, as an analytical tool, Excel was a real game changer. It allowed you to model and analyze business situations while you could handle the underlying math effortlessly. It just allowed you to, every finance professional can relate to the satisfaction of starting with a blank spreadsheet and then later having a comprehensive financial model built with inputs and outputs. Everybody can relate to that. And I mean, there are things that I learned, truthfully, I never had fully understood the impact of a liquidity preference until I personally modeled the impact on my own common stock position. You use that immersion in data to really understand things, and that's one of the great things about Excel. And with each version of Excel, each iteration, it got better and better. I mean, they added more rows and more columns. You think, what's that like? I remember working with a guy one time who was building a model for our business, and I was sitting next to him for a couple of weeks, and he's working on this model, and then one day I come in and he looks really down, and I said, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "I just ran out of columns, and so he basically had to reorient his entire model to work with rows because he didn't have enough columns in Excel," which should tell you something right there. But anyway, that's a true story. But with each one, Excel added tabs, and it added the ability to pull in huge amounts of data into it. It just grew and grew. And then I think something happened in too many finance departments. Excel basically consumed their FP&A function. And what do I mean by that? Well, I always think about something that you wouldn't necessarily relate to Excel, but I'll tell you about it. It's a Japanese vine that was called Kudzu. And Kudzu was brought to the United States in the late 19th century. It was prized for having a grape-scented purple flower and very sturdy vines. And after 35 years of kudzu in gardens with limited use, things changed. And if you go to like the mid-30s, the time of the Dust Bowl and Woody Guthrie and John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath, America's prairies were being ravaged by dust storms, and Congress declared a war on soil erosion. And the weapon of choice to fight soil erosion was kudzu. The idea that if we put this vine in and used it more and more, it would help with that problem. Well, it turned out that it was a little more than advertised. It not only, once it got established, it would grow at an incredible pace. And kudzu vines can grow up to 100 feet in length. And it basically consumed everything in its path. It could overwhelm small buildings, trees. If you parked your car in the wrong place in the south along the side of the road, you might come back a couple of days later to find out that it was completely overtaken with kudzu and you couldn't find it. You might think, why does that relate? Well, it's kind of the same thing as what Excel does in an FP&A function. It starts out as a very useful tool, and you're lured in as an FP&A person by the ease of use and the tremendous flexibility that Excel provides you. And so your function just provides fertile ground for it to flourish. And then all of a sudden, you have this huge, immense library of spreadsheets that you're maintaining, and they get bigger and bigger. Imagine you're a new FP&A employee, you're Bob, and you come into a company and you want to start building some models for the business and some reports for management. And so first thing you do is maybe you get an extract of all the data from the general ledger system. Maybe you use QuickBooks, and maybe the data doesn't come out that cleanly, so you get it in 6 or 7 different tabs, and you paste it all into Excel. And you start adding some filters and some lookups and things like that. And all of a sudden you've got, a lot of data, and you start to build a series of Excel reports in a monthly reporting package. And then you start to say, well, we need some metrics, so I'm going to bring in some data from our CRM system. Maybe we use Salesforce, and I'm going to bring in headcount information from HRIS. I'm going to pull all that in, and I'm going to use Excel to combine that too, because Excel is a really good tool sometimes for connecting data sets from various systems that you can't, don't exist in any one system. And so you do it for the first month, and you create this reporting package for April, and then the next month you want not just April, but you want the next month plus a year to date. So you not only bring in the May information, but you create a whole bunch of tabs to add up April and May. Then you want quarterly splits when you get to June. So now I've got another tab to add those together. Meanwhile, I'm changing reports, I'm tweaking reports. Somewhere as I'm bringing in all this data from all these data sources, and I guarantee you this will happen, you're going to hard code something. You got to get something ready, you got to get a package, and you don't know where this number comes from, and you just key it in someplace. And later on, that little bit of hard-coded data will come back to haunt you with a catastrophic error that you never imagined because the system is the formula is applying to a hard code. So you keep doing these things, and soon you have this spreadsheet that's the center of every bit of your financial planning and analysis activity. All your reporting comes out of it, and you've got all kinds of issues that start to develop, not just things like hard coding and errors that can develop, but you have version control issues. For example, your controller, you extracted all the data from the GL system for the current month, and you started building the board reporting package in Excel. And 2 days later, you find out that, the controller had forgotten to make one key journal entry, so they went back and made it. But you're already 2 or 3 days into this reporting package. You're not going to want to re-download or re-extract the current month's GL. And so you say, I'll fix that next month in the reporting package. So I'll just tell you one lesson I've learned is one of the biggest pet peeves of private equity guys and venture capital folks is that they hate when you send them the May package and they go back and they look at their April package and the month of April has changed. Drives them crazy when versions don't move forward and tie from period to period. It drives them crazy, and that's why it happens, because you're using Excel to pull all this thing together. And you got this central spreadsheet, and it has countless tabs. It can have countless rows. I had a client that literally built the spreadsheet that they ran their business with had more tabs than I ever counted, to be honest. Every tab had 140,000 rows, and every tab had columns going out to column XJ, however many that is. I could do the math, but times 26. and every time they pushed recalc on the thing, it would require about 20 minutes to recalculate the spreadsheet. And it just was overwhelming. And like Bob, the person I'm talking about here, you end up spending your entire time nursing that spreadsheet along and keeping it going and everything. So Bob does this for years in our example. And then one day Bob decides to move on to a new job, and he takes this entire monstrosity of a spreadsheet, this edifice to everything he's done, and he turns it over to Mary, the new FP&A person. And Mary comes in, and she certainly doesn't have the history that Bob has in terms of every cell in this spreadsheet and how it was built and every tab. And so eventually the whole thing just collapses. It can't be maintained. And for a while, you start getting data that doesn't match, and then it just falls apart. And if you think about it, it's the flower of Excel has now turned into this killer vine, and it's completely consumed all of your company's financial activities. And I talk to a lot of CEOs, and they say, yeah, we're driven by spreadsheets. Everything is a spreadsheet, and we spend half our time trying to reconcile one person's spreadsheet to another. And if you're using Excel for this, for all your reporting, your forecasting, your budgeting, it's like trying to use a butter knife to cut down a tree. It's just not the right tool. Excel is a great tool for analysis, but it just doesn't scale to support an FP&A function. It wasn't meant to be a huge repository of all the data of the company. So if Excel can't do everything for you, what is the answer? The answer is to use scalable OLAP-based tools like the FutureView platform as an example. So OLAP stands for Online Analytical Processing. So you could think of it as sort of a pivot table on steroids. It allows you to store data centrally and then pull it out and slice, dice, and aggregate it very efficiently. When I was the finance director for Bristol Myers in Asia Pacific, and I was responsible for bringing together P&Ls and financial statements for 15 countries with multiple categories of product and 3 divisions in each country, truthfully, an OLAP tool saved my life. It was the only way that aggregation of data could be done efficiently. And if you couple that by directly integrating with your general ledger system so that you have all the data pulling in a synchronized fashion out of your GL, this enables you to really manage your reporting, your forecasting, and budgeting without the version issues, the data storage issues, and the huge amount of time that you spend just putting together the reports in Excel. With a good OLAP tool and a good system like the FutureView platform, you have the reports immediately available to you, pulling directly from your general ledger, and you can spend a lot more time thinking about what the reports tell you as opposed to just pulling them together. And the other piece of that is then everybody is always looking at the same version because you're pulling the data from the general ledger. You're not, which is your source of truth and which is already data is stored properly in. Excel on its own is a great tool for analysis. I said at the beginning, I'm not here to condemn Excel. It's a terrific tool. It has the flexibility that every finance professional needs. But as a standalone tool, it creates significant problems for your business as it scales. If you combine it, on the other hand, with something like FutureView's platform or FutureView Foundation, which pulls data out of your GL system, you can have both the flexibility of Excel and yet still accommodate your rapidly growing business.
To learn how FutureView software solutions can help your finance function, visit us at FutureViewSystems.com.